All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a totally bizarre 2026 bankruptcy deal that honestly might just change how you look at your everyday workplace emails forever. We're talking about Google. You know, the company that already knows what you search and where you go. Well, they just stepped into a bankruptcy court to buy up assets from a company you would absolutely never associate with big tech.
$10 million. That was the winning bid in this massive July 2026 bankruptcy auction. Google swooped in, beating out a $7.5 million bid from an AI data company called Mercer. But here's the wild part. They weren't buying a trendy tech startup or some cutting-edge software firm. They were literally bidding on the leftover assets of Spirit Airlines. Yes, the bankrupt budget carrier.
Now, usually when an airline goes under, you'd naturally think they're selling off their airport gates, their flight routes, or, those bright yellow physical planes just sitting out on the tarmac. But Google didn't want the planes. As a tech giant, they zeroed in on something entirely invisible, the digital footprint of Spirit's entire workforce.
The deal. Let's peel back the first layer of this onion and see exactly what Google walked away with from his unprecedented auction. The scale of this is just staggering. Google bought 100 million employee emails. They bought 500 million with a B Microsoft Teams chat messages. Think about that. Every internal debate, every shared document, every single schedule. Plus, 30 million lines of source code, massive caches of HR files, and 7.2 billion competitor flight pricing data points. It is a breathtaking, massive volume of human and corporate information.
But, okay, let's draw a strict line here because this is important. Google did not buy passenger data. If you've ever flown Spirit, your credit card numbers, your name, your frequent flyer loyalty data, all of that was completely excluded from the sale. Google also promised that a rigorous third-party data scrub will happen to wipe out personally identifiable information, like names and direct contact info, before any of this data ever touches a Google server. So you might be wondering, if the customer data is safe and the names are being scrubbed, what's the problem?
Section 2. The privacy illusion.
Well, enter the Association of Flight Attendants. That's the union representing Spirit's employees. And they stepped in with a massive official objection that has actually delayed the bankruptcy court hearing until September 9, 2026. Their official stance, quote, "This is outrageous." And honestly, put yourself in the shoes of an everyday flight attendant for a second. They are deeply unsettled by the fact that a massive tech corporation is just swooping in to buy emails and chats and performance reviews that they wrote on company time, just going about their daily jobs.
And it really comes down to a geeky but absolutely crucial technical detail called referential integrity. Basically, this means the data tables being handed over aren't just being scrambled into a random soup, they are being kept linked together. So if you look at a specific unnamed employee's email, you can still trace that exact same person back to their performance reviews, their chat messages, and their payroll data, because those underlying links connecting the records remain completely intact. It's like a giant puzzle where the picture is still perfectly clear.
This totally exposes the massive gap between two very different concepts, anonymization versus de-identification. True anonymization means data is randomized so heavily that you absolutely cannot identify anyone. Period. De-identification, which is what we're looking at here, just means, well, taking the names off. But as we just saw, if all those internal links stay intact, you aren't really invisible at all.
And to put that into perspective, Spirit only had about 5,500 total employees. That's a relatively tiny closed workforce pool. The union is arguing that in a pool this small, de-identification is practically meaningless. I mean, think about it. If you have an employee's job title, their specific shift schedule, their approximate payroll data, and an internal company ID tag, even without a literal name attached, it is incredibly easy to narrow that down and figure out exactly who that person is.
Section 3. Training the next AI.
So why does a tech titan with over $300 billion in annual revenue want this stuff so badly? Because to Google, $10 million is literal pocket change. Obviously, they aren't trying to start a competing airline. They want this for one core reason: acquiring irreplaceable real-world data to train the next generation of AI. To build these future AI agents that can actually perform complex human jobs instead of just, writing a poem for you, you need messy, unpolished, realistic human data. By feeding Spirit's records into their models, Google is basically teaching its AI how humans navigate corporate hierarchies, how we manage ridiculously complex logistical schedules, how we coordinate operational crises like sudden weather delays, and how we negotiate pricing strategies in real time. You literally cannot find this kind of high-stakes, real-world corporate communication at this massive scale anywhere else.
Section 4. the great data gold rush.
Now, this bizarre airline deal isn't just happening in a vacuum. It's actually a glaring symptom of a much broader macro trend. The AI industry is quite literally running out of public internet data. It's a real data gold rush, and tech companies are getting incredibly aggressive in their hunt for fresh training material. First, they scraped everything on the open web. Then Google got hit with an EU antitrust probe over using YouTube videos for AI training. Then we saw heavy scrutiny over AI companies trying to access sensitive medical records. And now? Well, now we've arrived at this brand new frontier, literally buying up the bankrupt private internal records of everyday corporations. Section 5. The legal deadlock.
So we are heading straight for this massive September court battle that perfectly balances two opposing forces: corporate bankruptcy rights on one side and the future of employee privacy on the other. And when we impartially weigh both sides of this deadlock, they both have really strong points. The union argues that everyday employees have a reasonable expectation of privacy in their internal communications, and that keeping those data linkages completely undermines the whole idea that this is anonymous. But Google's argument is just as clear. They are strictly following bankruptcy law, they aren't touching customer passenger data, they are mandating third-party scrubbing, and ultimately, Spirit Airlines is legally entitled to sell off its assets to pay down its debts.
Which brings us right back to you and your own daily reality. In the AI era, what can a company actually sell when it goes bankrupt? If your workplace writes code, keeps performance reviews, and sends millions of emails, is that digital footprint simply another liquidatable asset? Is it just like an office chair or a computer monitor waiting to be auctioned off?
And that leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question to think about. When you send a quick message to a colleague on Teams, or when your company tracks your daily productivity, is that data yours? Or is it just a company asset ready to be sold to the highest bidder the absolute second times get tough? The September 2026 court ruling will give us one legal answer, but the conversation about who truly owns our digital work lives, that is only just beginning. Think about that the next time you hit send.